Have you ever been sitting at the kitchen table, sipping your morning coffee, when the phone rings and it's one of your kids? You hear their voice. Maybe it's a little tense, maybe a bit tired, and they say something like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" Before you know it, they're opening up about a problem they're facing. Maybe something at work, a challenge in their marriage, or even a deeper struggle that's been weighing them down for a while. Now, let me ask you this. What's your first instinct in that moment? For many of us, especially those of us who've spent decades solving problems, raising families, and holding everything together, it's natural to want to fix things. We want to offer advice, suggest a solution, or tell them what we would do if we were in their shoes. That's love. That's instinct. That's experience talking. But here's the part nobody tells us as we get older. When your adult child shares a problem with you, what they need might not be a solution. It might be something far more meaningful and something only you can give them in that moment. That's why this conversation is so important. Because if your son or daughter opens up to you, if they let you into that vulnerable part of their life, it's not just small talk. It's not just unloading. It's a signal. And knowing how to receive that signal can strengthen your bond, deepen your relationship, and even help them face their challenges with more clarity and courage. So today, let's talk heart to heart about what your kids truly need from you when they come to you with their problems. And let's start with something simple but powerful: your presence. I don't mean just physically being there. I mean really being there. Fully present, eyes on them, phone down, mind quiet. Because when someone shares something vulnerable, the first thing they're searching for, whether they realize it or not, is whether the person listening is really listening. And you know what? You don't have to say much. Sometimes a gentle nod, a soft "I hear you," or just holding their gaze with patience can speak louder than 1,000 words. You might not realize it, but in those quiet, attentive moments, you're giving them something precious: emotional safety. You're creating a space where they feel seen and heard, not judged, not fixed, not managed, just heard. And in a world where everyone's rushing to respond, that kind of listening is rare. It's a gift only someone who truly cares can give. Now let's talk about trust, because that's the foundation of why they're sharing with you in the first place. When your child opens up, especially about something painful or confusing, it's a sign that they trust you deeply. Not just as their parent, but as a person, as someone who can hold what they're carrying, even if only for a few minutes. And that trust? That's built over years of being dependable, showing up, and loving them through all the messy, beautiful phases of life. But here's the tricky part. Trust can also be fragile. It can be unintentionally bruised by a rushed judgment, a dismissive comment, or even an attempt to help that lands the wrong way. That's why one of the greatest things you can do in that moment is to pause before you speak. Take a breath. Let their words settle. Ask a gentle question if you're unsure how to respond. Because sometimes the best answer isn't an answer at all. It's simply, "That sounds really hard. I'm here. And listen, I know how tempting it is to give advice. After all, you've lived longer, seen more, survived things they can't even imagine. You've got wisdom they haven't earned yet." But think of it like this. Imagine you're walking through a storm, soaked and tired, and someone hands you an umbrella and says, "I've walked through storms like this too." That feels comforting. But if instead they say, "Why didn't you take the other road? I told you not to go this way," it stings. Even if they're right, it doesn't help in that moment. Your child doesn't need a roadmap. They need shelter, just for a moment, just until they can gather themselves and take the next step. Another thing to remember is that when they share their struggles with you, they're not just looking for answers. Sometimes they're looking for connection. They want to feel close to you, to remember they're not alone. And let's be honest, as our kids get older, those moments of real closeness can feel fewer and farther between. Life gets busy, priorities shift, and sometimes the deep talks don't happen as often. So when they do, cherish them. See them as the sacred opportunities they are. You might not always understand what they're going through. The world they live in now is different. Faster, more complex, more connected, and yet more isolating. But you don't need to understand every detail to understand them. What matters is that they feel safe enough to come to you. That speaks volumes about the bond you've built, and the role you still play in their life, no matter how grown they are. Now let's talk about emotional steadiness. Because here's the truth. When someone's feeling overwhelmed, they're looking for a calm harbor to pull into. And for many of us, especially as we age, we have something beautiful to offer. The ability to stay calm, to listen without panic, to bring peace into a stormy moment. That doesn't mean you won't feel concern. Of course you will. You're a parent. You'll never stop worrying about your kids. But reacting with calm instead of panic can make all the difference. It tells them, you're not alone, and we'll get through this together. I remember a time years ago when my daughter called me in tears. She was going through something big, something I couldn't fix. But I'll never forget what she said later. She said, "Dad, I just needed to hear your voice. I needed to feel like everything was going to be okay. And you know what? I didn't have the answers that day. But my voice, my steady presence, was enough. And sometimes that's all it takes." So if your child comes to you with a heavy heart, give them that steady presence. Let them lean on your calm. That quiet strength you've spent a lifetime building, it matters now more than ever. There's something else they need from you too, and it's something not everyone is willing to offer: patience. Because the truth is, some problems don't have quick fixes. Some struggles won't be resolved in one phone call or one conversation. They might revisit the same issue again and again, trying to make sense of it, working through their emotions slowly. And in those moments, your patience is more powerful than any advice. It tells them, take your time. I'm not going anywhere. Being that patient presence isn't always easy. You might feel helpless or even frustrated. You might want to shake them and say, "Why can't you just move on?" But your restraint, your willingness to simply be there, is an act of deep love. And whether they say it or not, they will remember that kindness. And if you're ever unsure what to say, start with this: "Thank you for trusting me." Because it is a trust. And they chose you. Let that sink in for a moment. They chose you. Not because you have all the answers, not because you'll always say the perfect thing, but because they know your heart. And in a world that often feels cold, they know your warmth is real. When your child opens up to you, there's another thing they're hoping you'll give them. Not out loud, not directly, but in a quiet, unspoken way. And that's emotional understanding. Not just hearing the words they say, but trying to feel what they're feeling. You don't have to agree with every choice they've made. You don't have to fully relate to their situation. But if you can let go of judgment, even for just a few moments, you can give them something most people in their lives don't offer: a safe place to be honest. Think about it. How many people in their lives do they truly feel safe being vulnerable with? Probably not many. The world today, especially for younger generations, can feel like a stage where everyone has to act like they've got it together. But when they come to you, they're not putting on a show. They're letting their guard down. And that's something sacred. This kind of emotional understanding doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from remembering your own moments of struggle. Think back to a time when you faced something difficult, maybe a mistake, a loss, or a decision you weren't sure how to make. What helped you get through it? Was it someone fixing the problem for you? Or was it someone sitting with you in the discomfort, offering support without pressure? Chances are it was the latter. That person who listened, who didn't rush to fix you but simply stayed by your side, they probably made all the difference. Now it's your turn to be that person for your child. Here's something else they need: a reflection. Not a mirror that points out flaws, but a reflection of their strength, their courage, and their worth, especially when they can't see it themselves. When they're feeling lost or insecure, hearing words like, "I believe in you," or "You've handled tough things before, and I know you'll get through." This too can be the lifeline they need. It doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means reminding them of who they are, especially when they're doubting it. You might be surprised how far a few encouraging words can go. You don't need to give a speech. A simple, "I'm proud of you," or "You've got this," can echo in their hearts for days, weeks, even years. We often forget how powerful our voices can be in the lives of the people we love. And sometimes what they need most is your silence. Not cold silence, but thoughtful, caring stillness. The kind of silence that holds space without rushing to fill it. Because sometimes they're not looking for a back and forth. They're not even looking for your opinion. They just need to speak something out loud to someone who loves them enough to simply let it land without interrupting. It takes strength to listen like that. It takes patience and humility, but it also creates trust. And trust, once built in that way, runs deep. There's something else we don't often talk about, but it's just as important. Your kids need you to be curious, not nosy, not prying, but genuinely interested in their inner world. That means asking questions like, "What's been the hardest part of this for you?" Or "How are you feeling about it now?" It shows them you're not just tolerating the conversation, you're invested. You're leaning in. You care enough to want to understand what's really going on underneath the surface. And when you ask those kinds of questions, with kindness and without judgment, something beautiful happens. They open up more. They begin to explore their own feelings more clearly, often just because someone cared enough to help them unpack it. Now, it's also true that sometimes your kids might be afraid to open up to you. Not because they don't love you, but because they're not sure how you'll respond. Maybe in the past, you've come across as a little too quick to advise, or a little too eager to explain what they should have done differently. And let's be honest, we've all done that at some point. It doesn't make you a bad parent. It just means there's room to grow, even now. Growth doesn't stop at 60 or 70 or even 90. Every day is a new opportunity to become softer, wiser, more compassionate. That's the gift of aging, not just in years, but in perspective. So if your child hesitates before sharing something personal, take that moment as a quiet invitation to soften your approach. You might say, "I just want you to know, I'm here to listen, not to fix anything, just to be with you in whatever you're going through." You might be amazed how much those words can open a door. Your kids may not say it outright, but they need to know they're allowed to feel. That it's okay to cry, to be angry, to feel lost or confused. And that they can bring those emotions to you without fear of being corrected or minimized. You can be the person who says, "It's okay to feel what you're feeling." That validation, that permission, can be healing in ways you may never see, but they'll always remember. Sometimes they also need perspective. Not a lecture, not a life lesson, but a gentle reminder that hard moments don't last forever. You've lived long enough to know that most storms pass. Most heartaches ease. Most things that seem impossible in the moment become manageable with time and love and support. When they're caught in the middle of something painful, they may not be able to see that. But you can. And if you share it with kindness, your perspective can help them breathe again. Let's not forget that your calm is a kind of medicine. Your steady voice, your warm presence, your willingness to just sit with them in the unknown, it matters. Especially now when the world feels louder, faster, and more demanding than ever. Your ability to slow things down, to offer kindness without strings. It's something rare, something sacred. You don't need to do anything grand. You don't need to have a psychology degree or give the perfect advice. All you really need is love, patience, and the courage to sit with someone's pain without turning away. That's what your kids need from you when they bring their struggles to your doorstep. Not perfection, not solutions. Just you. Calm, listening, accepting, steady. That's the kind of presence that stays with a person long after the conversation ends. There's something quiet but incredibly powerful that your children may be asking for, even if they don't realize it themselves. And it's your consistency. Now that might sound simple, maybe even too simple. But in today's world, where everything changes so quickly and relationships often feel uncertain, your steady presence can be one of the few things in their life that feels solid. Think about it. You've likely been the one constant across all the chapters of their lives, through scraped knees, heartbreaks, college, careers, marriages, and beyond. But even as adults, they still need to know that you're there. Not just in the emergencies or when they've accomplished something worth celebrating, but in the in-between. The boring days, the confusing days. The days when they're not sure if what they're feeling even makes sense. And in those moments, your reliability becomes a kind of comfort they may not even know they've been craving. Consistency doesn't mean always having the right words or never feeling tired or overwhelmed yourself. It means showing up again and again with the same steady heart. Being that quiet place they can come back to, not for answers but for warmth. Another thing they may be reaching for is your acceptance, not just of who they are now but of who they've been, even the parts they're not proud of. We all have those parts, don't we? Chapters in our story we wish we could rewrite. And yet, love has this incredible power to say, I see you, all of you, and I love you still. If your child shares something they've done or felt ashamed of, or maybe a mistake they regret, what they're really asking is, do you still see me the same way? And your answer, even if unspoken, can offer healing that no advice ever could. Your look of compassion, your steady voice, the hand that reaches out instead of pulling away. That's what lasts. Acceptance also means not needing your kids to become someone. They're not in order for you to stay close. Maybe their lifestyle is different from yours. Maybe they've made choices you wouldn't have. That's okay. You're allowed to have your thoughts and values. But your love doesn't have to come with conditions. When they feel safe to be who they are with you, truly and fully, that's when the relationship deepens into something real, something rich. Sometimes what your kids need most is just permission. Not permission in the parental sense, like when they were young and asking to stay out past curfew, but emotional permission. Permission to feel, to not be okay, to be a little lost, to be human. And who better to offer that than you? You've lived through enough life to know that we all have seasons of confusion, moments where we're unsure, overwhelmed, or just plain tired. You don't have to fix those moments. You just have to say, you're allowed to be where you are right now. You're not broken. You're just being human. And that kind of emotional freedom coming from someone they love and trust. That's a kind of healing not found in any book or podcast or therapy session. It's found in the eyes of someone who truly sees them and stays. One of the most underrated gifts you can give, especially now, is grace. We live in a time where everyone is quick to judge, quick to correct, quick to cancel. But grace says, I know you're not perfect, and I love you anyway. Grace is choosing to believe the best in someone, even when they're struggling. Grace is patient. Grace is kind. And grace is something your children may be longing for more than they can express. Sometimes your child may come to you not because they want to talk, but because they want to be with you. Just to sit. Just to feel your presence. Maybe they're not even sure what they need yet. That's okay. You don't have to fill the space with noise. You don't have to entertain them or analyze them. Just be there. Put on the kettle. Sit on the porch. Let the silence be sacred. Some of the deepest healing happens in stillness. Now let's touch on something that's not always easy to admit. Your child may come to you hoping for emotional reassurance, that they're not disappointing you, that they're still loved, that they're still good, especially when they're in pain or feel like they've failed. In that moment, what they're really saying underneath it all might be, "Do you still see me the way you used to when I was little? When I messed up and you pulled me into your arms instead of pushing me away?" And your answer, in your tone, your posture, your eyes, it matters more than you may ever know. You can be the one who says, "There's nothing you could do that would make me stop loving you. I may not always agree with you. I may not always understand. But my love for you, that's never been on the table." Saying that out loud, that can change everything. It's never too late. Even if you've had your fair share of disagreements or distance. Love is a door that opens again and again if we let it. Sometimes the most healing thing you can say is simply, "Thank you for telling me." That one sentence carries so much weight. It says, "Your voice matters." It says, "I respect your honesty." And it says, "You're not alone in this anymore." When your child brings a problem to you, they may not need it solved. But they always need to know they're not carrying it alone. And here's the beautiful truth. You've already got everything you need to be that person for them. You don't need to study psychology. You don't need to know the latest trends. What you do need, and already have, is your presence, your patience, your open heart. That's what they need. Not perfection, not certainty, just you. So the next time your son or daughter picks up the phone or sits across from you with something heavy on their mind, take a breath, slow down, put everything else aside for a moment. And remember, this is a moment that matters. You're not just a parent. You're a lifeline, a source of quiet strength in a noisy world. And your presence, your willingness to be there without judgment or pressure, that is a rare and powerful gift. If you've been watching this and something inside you is nodding along, maybe you're thinking of a recent conversation you had with your child, or maybe one you wish you handled differently. That's okay. This isn't about guilt, it's about growing. And it's never too late to become the kind of parent, the kind of person who offers comfort instead of control, curiosity instead of critique, love instead of lectures. Every conversation is a chance to show up a little softer, a little wiser, a little more like the person your child needs, and the person you were always meant to be. You know, there's something profoundly beautiful about being the one someone comes to when life feels heavy. It means they trust your strength, your steadiness, and your heart. And when it comes to your kids, whether they're 25, 45, or even older, that trust is not just an accident. It's something built over years of small moments. The bedtime stories, the school pickups, the late-night talks, the arguments, the makeups, and the times you simply sat beside them and said nothing at all. Now, in this season of life, when they come to you with their problems, they're not just looking for a parent. They're looking for a safe place, a lighthouse, a familiar warmth, a person who can hold space for their doubt, fear, or confusion without flinching. And the beautiful truth is, you already are that person. You've always been that person. Maybe now you just need a gentle reminder of the power you carry, not in what you say, but in how you listen, not in what you solve, but in how you show up. So what do they need from you? They need your presence, your full attention when the rest of the world is distracted. They need your steadiness, the calm you bring when emotions are high. They need your patience, the willingness to listen, even if the story sounds familiar. They need your encouragement, not grand speeches, just a reminder that you believe in them. They need your acceptance, the kind that doesn't require performance or perfection. They need your understanding, not always agreement, but curiosity and compassion. They need your grace, the kind that allows for mistakes and welcomes growth. They need your reflection, helping them remember their strength when they've forgotten. They need your silence, the sacred kind that simply holds space. And more than anything, they need your love, steady, unconditional, and unwavering. You don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to always get it right. What matters most is your willingness to be there, to be open, to be soft where you used to be strong, to listen where you once lectured, to understand where you used to advise. And if you're sitting there thinking, "But I've made mistakes," join the club. We all have. There's no such thing as a perfect parent, not when they're toddlers, not when they're teenagers, and not when they're grown. But there is such a thing as a present parent. A kind parent. A parent who learns and grows and keeps showing up. If you've had conversations that didn't go well, if there are words you wish you could take back or moments you wish you'd handled differently, let yourself breathe. Let go of the shame. Instead, ask yourself this: what can I do today? Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's a letter. Maybe it's just sitting down with them and saying, "I know I don't always get it right, but I want to be here for you. Whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone." That kind of honesty and that kind of humility is the bridge back to connection. And don't underestimate how deeply your children long to feel truly connected to you, even if they don't say it, even if they push back sometimes. That longing is there, and you have the power to meet it. There's a quiet kind of strength in being someone your kids can lean on without fear. A strength in not needing to be the hero, just the haven. And when you live from that place, from your heart, from your stillness, from your wisdom, you don't just strengthen your relationship with your children. You strengthen yourself. You become someone who shows others that age doesn't mean becoming less important. It means becoming more valuable. That growing older doesn't mean fading into the background. It means stepping into your greatest role yet, the calm, wise presence the world so desperately needs. If this message has touched something in you, take a moment, right now, to reflect. Maybe you've already been this kind of parent, this kind of listener. And if so, thank you. The world needs more people like you. Or maybe you're just now realizing how powerful your presence can be, and you're ready to start showing up in a deeper way. Wherever you are, you're not too late. You're right on time. If this conversation spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments. Maybe tell us about a time your child opened up to you, what you did, what you learned, or even what you wish you'd done differently. Your story might be exactly what another parent needs to hear today. And if you found this video helpful, would you give it a thumbs up? It really helps support the channel and lets us know this kind of content matters. And don't forget to subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. We've got more real, meaningful conversations like this one coming your way. Conversations that honor your wisdom, your growth, and your place in your family's life. No matter how old your children are or how far they've flown, you matter. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. So here's to being the steady hand your children can reach for in the dark, the calm in the storm, the listener who doesn't need to fix, but simply stays. Here's to living your best life at any age, with an open heart, a curious mind, and a spirit that never stops growing. Take good care of yourself. And thank you for being here. Until next time.